era and the post-COVID era. COVID has been a disruption in terms of the way we do business and the rapid adoption of technology across the sphere and spectrum. I'm sure if you just before March, we wouldn't have had grandparents talking or allowing their grandkids to be on the laptops or mobiles or tablets. Think of it today, the grandparents sit along with the kids attending their school classes or facilitating the Zoom calls or Zoom school, the education on tablets or on the laptops. Think of it, the next door Kirana outlet was being managed in a very traditional manner, and today they use Google Forms and they use WhatsApp to order and deliver the entire groceries. Technology has impacted almost every sector of the corporate world as well. It has influenced almost all the sectors in the corporate world, including the function in which we are going to talk about and talk about the must-have technology solutions in the human capital space. With us, we have eminent speakers from the industry to share their view on the various technology solutions which are now a must-have for the corporates. Our first speaker represents one of the largest investment tools like mutual funds, AIFs, uh, PMS platforms. Think of it when the entire world was locked down and there was no operations happening. The number of people who invested into equity markets were just going up, and they had to keep the operations live and working. With us today, we have one of the Amit Singh, who represents and who heads the largest asset management company of the country, SBI Mutual Funds, SBI Asset Management Company. Amit Singh has Amit. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Amit. Amit leads the HR function at SBI Funds Management. He has been playing a key role in employee experience to build SBI Mutual Fund as an employer's choice. Amit brings in experience in HR transformation, talent management, HR digitization, capacity building, change management, and engagements. He's worked in the leadership roles across the banking, private equity, IT, information technology, and worked with companies like IDFC Asset Management Company, IDFC Securities. He sees the transition from IDFC becoming a bank. He's also worked with TCS and Blue Star Infotech. Good morning, Amit, and welcome, and thanks for being here as a speaker with us.
Thanks, Anu. It's quite good to be here.
It's our pleasure, sir. With us, we have the second speaker from one of the largest Tata Group companies, a giant in its own capacity. He's got 28 years of experience. He's not from the HR domain by his education. He's a metallurgist and has moved across diverse disciplines inside the corporate world. He's been in manufacturing. He's been in research and development, quality and business transformation, supply chain, and HR and in HR as well. He's headed the largest KPO BPO of the Tata Group eNext services. He was a founding member there. Within the HR domain, he has worked across the area of manpower planning and productivity management, talent and succession management, organization development, leadership development, compensation and benefits, and also into IT systems and shared services management. As a part of the current role, Mayuk Methi, our another speaker. Mayuk.
Hi.
Hi, Mayuk. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to all.
Good. Mayuk, as a part of the current role, he is also leading the strategic initiatives of creating insight-driven business and HR decision-making and engagement process through digitization, automation, analytics, and robotics. Good morning and welcome, Mayuk, to the event. And thanks for being here.
Very happy to be here.
Good. Our next speaker, while we were all sitting at home, the markets were shut, the essentials were being continuously delivered to our doorstep. Think of it where the e-commerce companies were powering the entire delivery systems for almost every good which were needed for keeping the households on. With us, we have Pranay Prakash. Pranay?
Hi, Ranu, and good morning.
With us, we have Pranay Prakash, who had almost 55,000 members working on the 24/7 to ensure the delivery of essential services across every corners of the country. Pranay has been heading the HR function at Delivery. Pranay also has played very important role in seeing the growth of Delivery from 3,500 people to 55,000 today. He's worked earlier with United Healthcare, Videocon, Reliance Retail in his earlier stints. Without wasting much of your time, I'll request Amit. I'll request my panelists to share their views, and we can just keep our phones on mute and ask the people to enlighten on the various things that are happening. Mayuk, I wanted to start with you with the kind of expertise that you bring in, right? We've been talking about the must-have technologies within the domain. Wanted to understand from you, what are the kind of technology solutions that you think that the industry would now ensure that these are must and essential, which facilitates HR function? Mayuk.
Yeah. So good morning once again to everybody, and let's start off the session. When we talk about HR technologies, I don't think HR technology per se is a new thing. From late 90s to early 2000s, we started off with the first wave of technology, HR technology, which was basically the ERP technologies, which basically focused on employee data administration, tracking, payrolling, all those things. The second wave came, which I called is the integrated talent management, where we looked at hiring, training, managing people, which is basically performance management systems and etc. All those technologies came into foray. The next wave came in terms of empowering people management. So engagement tools, shared services, employee self-services, all those tools came up. Now, what is happening today is because of the COVID, what has happened is immediately as the COVID hit us, the focus changed from the existing HR landscape into first creation of accessibility tools and collaboration tools. So you all of us know that the subscription of Zoom and MS Teams, etc., skyrocketed because everybody wanted to be connected and manage teams in a remote fashion. So the focus then changed from creation of the existing HR technologies which are going at a particular speed to immediately adoption of all those technologies which created accessibility, created better controls, created focus on productivity, effectiveness. So even in the existing platforms, for example, a recruitment platform or example, a training platform, the focus changed from creation of doing those transactions to creating the effectiveness or creating the experience for the end candidate or experience even for the employees. So for example, in analytics, for example, in recruitment, earlier the recruitment was more transactional. Now the focus is how do I select the right person? How do you use AI tools to sort of segment different customer profiles, the employee profiles, prospecting employee profiles, match them to your JDs, bring them. So if you get 100 odd database, how do you sort of bring it down to say 15 odd or 10 odd people who are the most effective for your organization, and hence the recruiter productivity goes up. At the same point of time, you're able to give a much better experience to the employee, the prospective employee whom you will actually interview and take them forward. Even the interview tools, there are various new analytics, for example, facial recognition tools, all those which create more effectiveness for the end outcome, for example, recruitment. Even for training, for example, training earlier we were talking about LMS platforms, the learning management platform. Now the focus is slowly changing to LXPs, learning experience platform, where you are saying that you'll create an experience. It'll become like a Netflix of training platforms, where candidates, where employees can choose what they want to do, and depending upon their interest or content, they can choose content, and the content can be customized and thrown to them. So those are the changes which are slowly happening in the HR domain. So basically AI and ML digital platforms, real-time feedbacks. These are the basic changes which are happening to this, apart from the focus on creation of collaboration. And I strongly believe that the days have gone when there'll be one platform which will provide everything. Going ahead, for example, the organizations will choose to have a core platform, but there'll be a multifarious integration with different smaller platforms, which will give the best of breed experience. Basically, to those sit on the mother platform to create those experiences for the end user. So those are the changes which I see are happening very rapidly in this HR space. Ranu, you're on mute. Ranu, you're on mute, I guess.
Amit? Amit?
Yeah.
Yeah, Amit, I'm audible, right? I'm good. How has it been with you guys?
Yeah, so I think, one of the things that happened in 2020 was, something which was, kind of not expected. And I think I was quite amazed. And when we're talking about HR tech as one of the, topic of discussions here, I think this is one single piece of, initiative that has gained traction significantly over a period of last 1 year. I quite agree with Mayuk when he brings in HR tech and experience and how the HR tech journey has evolved over a period of time. I think just to add there, one of the other things that have happened, and I'll kind of spend a minute there, which is, the evolution of HR function per se over a period of time. So as Mayuk spoke about, ERPs came in, a lot of that development actually happened keeping the organization in mind. So you want to create databases, you want to create employee records, you want to, then somebody decided saying that, okay, we can do performance appraisals on HR tech. So primarily saying, how do you really help the HR function to become more efficient? That was the whole idea around designing some of the ERP platforms, right? So the user interface didn't matter at all at that point in time. Over a period of last 10 years that I've experienced, and actually more in last 3 or 4 years, user interface and how easy it is for the customer, which is the employees, to perform various activities has become significantly important. So those solutions have gained traction significantly. The adoption has become very important in the last 1 year. The number of companies which actually thought that maybe we will postpone getting a HR tech system actually have now taken the decision to bring that solution to their employees. So here the customer has become very important from an employee point of view. Now, if you consider the entire HR life cycle, and some of the things that we have done is we took this decision to move into a cloud-based platform some 3 years back, right? So today we have a very integrated set of HR life cycle onto one single platform. Which is around your hiring, learning and development. You'll have your performance appraisals, you'll have your onboarding, direct creation of employee files and all of that, right? So one of the very important things that happens here is how do you facilitate an employee to experience certain things, right? Mayuk also spoke about that. So just taking an example of saying that if you really want an individual to fill up paper earlier, how many times does he need to write his name? Today, he needs to fill his name when he's become a candidate. He fills his address and that's there for lifetime till the time he's an employee with us, right? So it's as easy as it is for an employee and the HR function. Today, let's say you need to let go of, let's say, a rating system. You need to get into a continuous feedback mechanism, right? On a day-to-day basis, the system provides, it's an easy app access. Managers can actually put in feedback for certain projects that have really gone well. You actually create a lot of ongoing dialogue with the employee and your subordinates, and you can do it upwards and downwards alongside. The data can be pulled into the annual appraisal exercise. It's as easy as that. If you want to change the philosophy of performance management, you make it very, kind of good. Mayuk also spoke about learning and development, and one of the other things that have gained traction is AI. Today, employees don't need to, 2 days sitting in a classroom going through lectures, right? So how does tech really help? So like we've tied up with one of the big AI engines. So today you're going into a big client meeting. You really need to find that 2 minutes. How do I crack this client? You go on the platform, get into a 3-minute video, get 3 outcomes, and you are set up for the meeting, rather than waiting for a lot of big ticket interventions. So that's one.
Right.
But yes, a lot of other interventions, which is around coaching, which is around building teams, collaboration, and all of that will still continue to function through some of these programs. So where again, HR Tech will play a significant important role. We have a approval system in place. So a lot of our things on a day-to-day basis get into an approval mechanism that's available for employees and management. So we have that as an online system today available as people move to their homes and started working from home. It's quite easy. So you just kind of prepare your notes and put it on the system, and it's there for sequential approving authorities to kind of, get the necessary approvals done. We today have our recognition platform right there. So we are a peer to, so we've seen something really good happening around us, and we just go on the system and kind of log in, thank you, great job done. It's as instant. So you just get it across the organization of how really an organization can become an appreciative organization, right? And then similarly, you have covered the entire life cycle. So I think it's very interesting how solutions have emerged, how HR Tech has started to take shape and started to create those right experiences for employees. And I think Mayuk spoke about saying that there is no single platform that can offer this. I actually challenge a lot of our tech developers and all of that, because this is an amalgamation of a lot of apps and systems. So it's a challenge for somebody who's sitting out and listening to us to say that can we bring all of this together rather than employees going through multiple systems and doing all of that. So how can that unique system be created? Right. So that's from us. That's from me, at least some initial thoughts.
Integration, I'm sure, integration of various platforms, I'm sure it's a technology thing. It is seriously very difficult that one system reads the other one and actually delivers.
Yeah.
Pranay, your view, I'm sure you were operational, and in that sense, I'm for you guys, you're a new generation business as well. So technology was, I'm sure, the base of building the entire business model. Your views would be very different, I assume, from what they are saying. So I wanted to understand your view as well on the technology, the must-have kind of solutions.
So thank you, Ranu, and thank you, Amit and Mayuk, for opening this up. Yes, we have been operational all through, barring the first week, the last week of March, which was first week of the lockdown. Apart from that, 1 week we are operational all through. And I've been myself been a big fan of using tech. My entire business, not only the HR part of it, but the entire logistics business is based on tech. Not a lot of companies of our size into this space have a 400-member or tech team, and we do, right? So that is the kind of focus that we have on technology as an organization and as a team as well. I think Mayuk covered it very nicely when he's kind of narrated the last 2 decades of the journey of how various HR platforms have transitioned from scale to scale, and from sort of you can say some 3 to 4 generations have passed by in last 2 decades when you talk about HR systems, right? Normally a generation would be about 25 to 30 years, but the kind of progress that HR platforms have made, it's actually 3 to 4 generations which have gone by. In terms of expectation, or in terms of what I see as, so I'll just divide this into 2 parts. One is what I expect from an HR solution or a HR tech solution or any other solution or any other product for that matter. One is the ability to be agile, the agility, right? Now, when I say agility, it is not only about making a small configuration here or customizing something for a particular client, but it is also about how you present the same thing to the different target segments within the organization, right? HR systems generally have, until now also, barring a couple of examples here and there and the recent advancements, in general, HR systems have facilitated the administrative part of the task, right? That, okay, you don't apply for a leave on a piece of paper any longer. You can do it online. Some organizations have gone beyond that and said that, okay, if you apply for a leave online, your manager has 2 days or 3 days to approve. In case he or she doesn't, then it is auto approved, those kind of things, right? So that is the best, but that is still solving an administrative problem, right? A person sitting at a leadership level, right, will not have that problem, will not have this as his problem, right? His problem will be completely different, right? So when I say agility, it also comes to the dynamism of the dashboards, the data views that the system presents. And it's not only about giving a view to the CEO that or the CFO that, okay, I had 2,000 people yesterday, I have 2,100 people today, right? That's not what they're interested in. What they're actually interested in is the entire analytics suite and not a couple of dashboards, right? Like the HRMS comes generally as a suite, right? I mean, there's a company which came up and you offer like some 6-8 different modules, right? The same focus needs to go on the analytics part also now, right? So that different people have different cuts, not only of what is happening right now or what has been happening in the past, but where does this make you end the year, right? So something which looks out 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, so that, because those are the decisions that you need to take. If you exceeded your wage bill, I mean, as on 9th of January, if I've exceeded my wage bill by 2 crores, there's nothing I can do about it. I exceeded. That ship has sailed, right? That ship has totally sailed. But if I go by the same rate, where do I end on 31st of March, right? That is my decision point. Whether I hire 2 more people right now or wait for the next financial year, the fresh budgets, AOPs, all of that, right? So the entire analytics suite is something that is required, a sort of a dynamic dashboard for the target population, right? Every manager should have a dashboard at his or her level that he or she can look at, right? And maybe the same views, but just rolling up to each other. So that is the expectation from that platform in general. Now there are a lot of solutions which offer. A lot of platforms which offer recruiting solutions, and that's been the in thing, right? I think Mayuk also pointed out, Amit also agreed. We are moving. There was a time when everything was coming into a suite format, and now companies are looking at different options, right? Because company X has like some 6 different modules to offer. Their recruiting module may or may not be the best, right? Now, why should I hold myself back from using the best available recruiting module if your company does not offer it, but somebody else does, right? So I would ideally want to use the best of recruiting, best of performance, the best of engagement, best of compensation, best of payroll. Yes, the core of my database has to remain the same. And that could be a bit of a technological challenge in terms of how you integrate this one core with so many other or multiple platforms coming from different providers. But that's a problem that you have to solve for. And generally, if you see, that's a problem which needs to be solved for on a one-time basis. Once a good integration has happened, right? These problems, it is only about a maintenance activity, right? And that would not be that big a problem. Now, when it comes to recruiting, now various people come and say, okay, this is what we do for recruiting. We have a JD versus CV match. I'll give you 83% match, 93% match. You can pick up the top 5. I think those solutions are already there, right? And these are all ML-based solutions generally. And the more you use those solutions, the smarter the machine also becomes, right?
Right.
But what this needs to move on to now is to the recruitment marketing side. Right now, when people talk about recruitment marketing, you have a LinkedIn, you have Naukri, you have probably IIMjobs, maybe a couple of other platforms, and you pay a whole boatload of money to these guys, and that's all about it, right? Now, when I call out recruitment marketing, it is right from the branding to the marketing to the advertising, the entire pull of the candidate, right? Where are those solutions beyond these 2-3 limited providers right now? Those solutions are not coming up, right? So somebody will have to innovate on that space also. Then I think a very big challenge which will be coming up, right, is how to manage the gig workers. You look at industries like retail, logistics, manufacturing, healthcare. These are some of the top that I can think. Channel sales, for example, right? You at some point in time, you would want people to work for you only 3 hours a day, because you will not have work for them. I mean, how do look at the Swiggy Zomato kind of a model, right? There's a breakfast time when people order breakfast, say 7 to 11 or 7 to 10 in the morning. Then people order lunch, say 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and then they order whatever, say the dinner time, which is the 7 p.m. onwards to whatever 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. What do these workers do in those intermediate hours, right? And if I employ them on a full-time basis, how do I utilize them? Or why should I employ them for those hours when to sit idle, right? So my productivity, which is currently at X, if I define a model or if I have a tool which can manage all of these for me, my productivity will go from X to maybe 3X, right? Because you are splitting out the 20 hours available in a day, or maybe some 18 hours available in a day, from say 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning till say midnight. Right? If I split that into a manner where people come, work for a couple of hours, take their money and go, right? Takes a lot of dead cost off my chest, right? So that kind of a tool which can monitor, manage all of this. Look at, I'm sure if there's anybody from companies like say Domino's or a Pizza Hut or a McDonald's, right? They do have part-timers, but that also is a 4-hour shift. Right? Why can't I have somebody come in for 2 hours only, deliver some 10 orders and go home? Right? Now, how do I manage this kind of workforce? Because currently I'm talking about 40-50,000 people. If I go to this model, I'll be talking about 2 lakh people. Right? So a system which has to scale up rapidly to support this.
Right.
Then it is about managing the entire compliance. You have a couple of tools in the market. Go to the big 4, they'll all have compliance tools to manage, but trust me, I've seen all and it doesn't work. Right? I mean, they come to you and they say, okay, you upload this form here or your PF challan here, and it will tell you whether you have complied or not. Now, and trust me, I've tried this. Instead of a PF challan, if I upload my own photo, it will still say, yes, you are complied. Right? So, and that is not measuring compliance, right? With the advent of, or the kind of future of workforce that we are looking at, in terms of gig workforce, the churn in the workforce, the new generation coming up, and looking at more employment opportunities, compliance is going to be a bigger risk, right? The code of wages or the new laws that the government has enacted, it is basically an amalgamation of multiple acts into 4 different buckets, right? It's not that they have done away with compliance requirements, and those will remain, right, in one shape or form or the other, right? So that's the other thing. And I think purely from experience and a lot of conversations that I have with people, something which can, so we spoke about measuring engagement of people, right? Or giving an early warning system, and a good AI-based system can give you all those signals, right? But how about measuring the mental health of the employees, right? I mean, people have been working from home for like 10 months now, right? I have known of a lot of instances where people were literally stuck inside a paying guest for 3 months altogether. They did not venture out. And we had to make ways to take them out to an office or send them back to their hometown, right? Now imagine a closed room. A tech guy, typically a coder or a software developer, stays in a paying guest, right? There's a closed room, maybe himself, all by himself, or maybe a roommate, right? And you don't see a third person for like ages, for 2 months, 3 months altogether, right? God forbid this situation does not come up again, but who knows, there's another COVID-like thing 10 years down the line, right? How are we prepared for that? We're not prepared for that. People come and offer you solutions saying, okay, buy this sort of insurance, this form of insurance, we'll do telemedicine, teledoctor, teleconsultation, all this is past. These are products which are already available, right? But the next step is to react to these, being proactive about this, not tell people that, okay, if you fall sick, then call up a doctor. I mean, everybody knows if you fall sick, call up a doctor. How could you tell if the person is about to fall sick, right? The financial health of individuals, right? Who's taking care of that? I mean, we all have, people from the HR domain, business domain, Mayuk has so much of experience, Amit is there. I mean, all of us know that, okay, for a certain job role, there's an X amount of salary that I'll pay. And which is fair. That's a scientific way of looking at things, right? And we all have different theories behind this.
Right.
Whether that takes care of the financial well-being or health of that individual, right? Or can this be remodeled in a different way, right? Those solutions are missing, right? So these are some of the tech solutions, and these are, I'm only naming a few. I'm sure we'll cover a lot more during the course of the discussion. But these are only some of the top few that I'm naming right now, where a lot of work still needs to be done, right? And that would be the expectation. So I mean, I get approached by some 2 HR tech companies probably every week. My only question to them is, how are you different? Because in 99 out of 100 cases, I hear the same dialogues again and again, to the extent that I can now pitch on their behalf if it comes to that, right? Because there's nothing new coming up. I mean, TK, you do recruiting, you have a recruiting engine. So does everybody else. I mean, how's your different? I mean, yours will be 83% accurate, somebody's will be 85% accurate. That's about it, right? What beyond that? Why? What about 98% accuracy? Nobody is going to that direction, right?
Right.
And that 90%, 98% accuracy is going to solve my problem.
Right.
You think I struggle between 83 and 85? I don't. I struggle between 85 and 98. That is my problem, right? So these are some of the top stuff that came to my mind, and I just thought we'll just throw it out there to in the open. But and I'm sure we'll discuss more along the course of this. So back to you.
One thing is common. I think thanks. I think this was very detailed and quite elaborative. I was expecting this coming from the new generation business in terms of the ideas, right? One thing which is common from all of you guys, we were talking about having tools like ERPs, from where we moved to cloud, and today we moved on to the experience. Everybody is talking about experience, right? What you spoke about, Pranay, you also spoke about being more proactive and data, or rather the use of data at multiple levels, right? The data can come in, and this way just facilitating HR. I just wanted to understand from Amit as well, and Mayuk, on this particular piece. How is today? How are we looking at various tools in taking up decisions, or proactive, or the pre-indicators of the which helps in terms of decision making? What you also simple example which Pranay also mentioned, that 2 crores over budget, and you know that, and you're on 9th of the month, and the entire month has to go. Are we using this any kind of pre-indicators which we're using today? Amit?
Yeah. So Radu. So I can't have any such tool that I can remember that we are kind of using, which can do some kind of predictions around, or can actually kind of create and help us take a business decision. Say that there are certain budgets that are out there, and then possibly you have overspent or something like that, and that's best left to the financial professionals and CFOs and who are managing all of that. And they can use a lot of other ERP systems, a lot of systems that are there to help them predict and budget better. But yes, I think one of the things that I can definitely say that what we use is to be able to create the right amount of forecasting of what is it that you really
missing you. I think this is a problem.
Need to do, right? The end of the fiscal year, right? And how do we,
you may want to put the video on mute.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, it is better.
It's perfect. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So I'm
yes.
I'm just kind of repeating it, saying, I think giving it an HR parlance, I think it's very important for us to know where we will be at the end of the financial year, right? And what are those tools and techniques that can really help us do that, and then bring that organizational element back into each individual employee and let them understand, what are their individual priorities through the course of the year. So there are enough tools that are available to do that, and you can do a top-down to a bottoms-up approach in terms of driving down those analytics, which actually translate into budgets and KRAs and some of those aspects, right? That will help you to make those decisions. You also have a lot of tools, like we are a sales organization. So we are close to around 300 locations across the country. Largest mutual fund. So hence, a lot of volume of data, some 4 million transactions in a day that we kind of process in terms of, putting in, logging in, customers' money. So there is a huge amount of tech involved, huge amount of processes involved. And that all needs to be managed in a manner where right kind of decisions. And we also, like, if we have to publish an NAV every day, right, it cannot happen till the time you're very, very precise with your systems processes, because that cannot go wrong. At the end of the day, you'll like be hitting a hit on a balance sheet if there is something wrong around the data that you're publishing, right, for the investors. So, so all of these are very critical and important factors that determine the kind of systems that we're using, and we have that across managing our, investments functions. Risk team sets up credit limits of what an investment team can take a decision. It's around the operations team, which actually processes backend applications and how quickly it goes out to our, our partners sitting out of Chennai, which actually processes a lot of these applications. So that integration is very important. Data flow is very important, right? So application get logged into one of the remotest location. There is a time stamping that you need to do. So at this point in time, this application has reached the investor, it's a cutoff time of 3 p.m. Let's say he comes and gives an application at 2:55. Would you take the money that day, or would you take the money next day? Because there is an NAV that is dependent on that, right? So that needs to be logged in a very precise manner, because again, so a lot of these decisions have financial impact to a great degree, right? The traders log in deals on system. Again, all of these are regulated. So the regulator comes in, defines the right kind of, and we need to prepare systems, and there is no two ways about it. You can't create your own rules around this. So there's something which is out there. So the backbone is the system. So a lot of these things cannot be done manually, and more or less everything today in terms of decisions. So today, let's say I'll give you an example. There is a huge focus around bringing in ML in investment decision making. So, so today, if you factor in that there is a fund which has done really well with some X percentage of returns over a period of 10 years, the investment professionals today, and we have some of the quant analysts and investment analysts who are actually working on creating tools and systems which can predict that if you choose certain kind of portfolio, there are greater chances that you will get this kind of return. And you can actually pull in data across the investment life cycle of various funds, pull in, create a model. And I think one of the asset management companies have that, and I don't remember the name right now. But this is very important. So tomorrow, what you're saying is a machine is going to make a decision on how your money will grow, right? With a very less human involvement. So it's a very interesting, so from a decision-making point of view, each step of the process, your risk systems today, to a great degree, help you to predict what could go wrong, right? Your InfoSec, and we're talking about tech here, so we'll obviously talk about it in some time. So all of these systems today create that balance between taking the right decision with a lot of also human involvement. So it's an interesting time.
I'm sure, Amit. Yeah, I heard about some products just off the line discussion in terms of away from the topic, where I think the new generation companies which are coming in the investments, the algorithm throws the triggers for equities and also for the mutual funds on a buy and sell decisions. Even the PMSs are running on that models completely now. Mayuk, anything that you specifically feel which is important from the discussions that we had, and you thought that can be added in terms of the tech solutions?
In the sense that, really speaking, what Pranay is talking about and what we're alluding to is on predictive analytics. Predictive analytics, and the predictive analytics, any predictive analytics model takes anything between 12 to 18 months to.
I agree.
Right? And it also requires a large amount of good time series data to build that model on. Now, this is my common experience across many companies, that the cleanliness and the quality of data that we have in terms of legacy data is not often what we require to build a good predictive model, HR data. And many companies have embarked on that in the last couple of years, or 2 years, 3 years, where as people mature into the HR tech technology, the richness of the data, legacy data, time series data keeps growing. And hence, the analytics model, the purity of the analytics model or the efficiency of the analytics model starts going up. Like what Pranay was talking about, 85% accuracy to 98% accuracy. That move, will have to depend on the quality of the data that you have. Second is how, because every data, for example, you build an analytics model, every month it will have to go into refinement process. You have to train that model every month, at least for the next 12 to 18 months, for its efficiencies to start going up. So yes, we have embarked on that journey, and we are doing predictive analytics right from recruitment to attrition to wage bill, and this is built up as a part of our budgeting cycle itself. So as our manpower planning, or because even if you take a simple thing as, for example, manpower planning starts with your business objectives, right? It flows down to tell that this, in this geography, in this product, this is what you want to achieve. To achieve this, you need so many salespeople. To get those salespeople, then this is a support organization that you need to have. If you have to have that support organization, this is the infrastructure that you need to do in terms of people, process, technology, systems, physical space, right? And all those other costs, and then that goes on to building up into your, so we have invested in tools to sort of look at that. But if you really ask me, we are still scratching the surface, and the accuracy, as Pranay was talking about, is anywhere between 80 to 85%. So you'll always have to build in that 15% extra buffer that your models will still go wrong, and it'll mature over a period of time.
Perfect. Thanks, Mayuk. Pranay, just wanted to understand, you've been talking about a lot of technology solutions, right? What are the key challenges faced by you or the industry in adopting such technology platforms? If you can, just throw some light. You spoke about multiple solutions.
One is there are a couple of key things here. One part of the problem is organizations themselves. People like us, right? And I'll take it on to myself also, because we don't give enough focus, resource, bandwidth, investment onto HR tech platform, because the mindset still is an HR admin kind of a thing, right? So part of the problem is us also, right? And the second part of the problem is people who are developing these kind of tools. And I'll just share you a couple of instances, not specifics, but generic instances, where I was talking to some of these so-called technology solution providers, and I asked them, okay, so fair, you started building this solution or this company 2 years back, and you built it to a certain scale. You have got some XYZ, whatever modules that you have got as part of your kitty. How many people and who all did you speak to before you started developing these? And you call these solutions, right? So there has to be a problem also. It's not that you have come to me with a solution and this. So people come to me and say, okay, we'll improve your efficiency by 35%. I was like, how? You don't know what my current efficiency is. Maybe I'm at 100%. We are going to improve this by another 35%, seriously, right? So a generic question that I asked people was, when you started this journey of creating these HR solutions or supposed HR solutions, who all were the people that you spoke to, right? How did you identify this problem? Now, that is where the gap is, right? So the gap starts right at the beginning, because somebody thought that, okay, I'll build an HRMS because there's a potential, and which is fair, right? You see a business idea, you want to pursue it, and all businesses run for profit, absolutely aligned, right? But then don't consider yours to be the best, the only solution which is there, because you never understood the problem. I would have loved if somebody would have gone to some 8, 10, 12 HR heads. Okay, fine. It's difficult to get their time, difficult to get to them, to get their time to gather their ideas and to comprehend their ideas also, because people at that level will talk at a completely different level altogether. Their narration of the problem will be totally different, right? But somebody has to spend a good 6 to 12 months time in identifying and zeroing down upon the problem and then start building solution. That's not the approach that people take, right? And this is, I think, uniform across all the platforms, that I have come across so far. And trust me, I have implemented 5 different platforms across organizations in my career so far.
Yeah.
I would have spoken to some 100 more, right? And I implemented those 5 because I did not find anything better at that point in time. Not that they were the best, but there was nothing better. And it was like, okay, let us solve the admin part of it at least. And trust me, with most of the HRMS solutions, we are still solving the admin part of it only. So part of the problem is us, where we do not want to, for some reason, see beyond that, or we have that desire, but not the same kind of fire with which we drive the business, right? And second is people who come up with these solutions, and that's why I think 8 out of 10 startups in this space do not do well, right? Because their narration, their ideation of the problem is incorrect, or either does not even exist.
Right.
So yeah,
Okay.
these are a couple of
Perfect.
things.
Amit?
Yeah, so with Pranay, I quite agree because I have also tried out multiple sets of systems in the last 15 years, and the journey with some of those have not been quite good. And obviously you do a selection for a certain point in time depending on what is available out there.
Right.
I actually go back to one of the things that we discussed earlier, which is around experience. So I think one of the things that the developers or people who are actually looking at the system is to say that keep the experience at the forefront and then start building your system, right? So as Pranay says, that experience, what's the definition of that experience? What do you really want an outcome of? Is not about saying that I need to hire X number of people and hence I need to have a system. That will happen in any case on the system.
Right.
So what kind of experience should a candidate go through on that journey of being a candidate to an employee? How do you create that enabling factors for him, for the manager? How easy it is for him to do that, right? Now, when you go deeper into it and start looking at experiences, you then start working backwards and says that, okay, how do I develop my system? Looking
Right.
at that, right? I haven't found actually, and agree with Pranay saying that that kind of thought process exists, right? I have met so many people, nobody comes with that kind of thought process in developing systems. And that's also a need of the hour from an HR point of view. The other important factor here is that how do you make it very easy? Pranay, you said agile, easy, right? So today we face this challenge of adoption. So if today I go to a lot of HR tech platforms, say that, okay, fine, great system, you're selling everything. Okay, how do I get the adoption going? How do I get, let's say 70, 80, 90% of my employees using this efficiently? Because that's the only way the success is defined. I can have the best of system, people are not using it effectively, then it doesn't help, right? So again, once the system is implemented, a lot of that goes away. So nobody takes the responsibility of saying, how do you really make the system successful in the organization that you've implemented? And then you kind of get into a lot of other dialogues and all of that. Other partners come into the picture, and then it becomes a service and adoption setup, right?
Right.
Which then becomes a different journey. So that entire supply chain of looking at the experience, designing a product, getting it successfully implemented, and defining success, what it is for the customer, today doesn't exist. I haven't found actually. So that's the biggest challenge, so to say. So looking at that entire big picture, then kind of coming and developing a system and then selling it out to the right person. That's what my take is.
We're talking about a completely different way of, today talking about experience is what I see. Talk about the experience, identify the requirement, go backward on the product development is what it comes out very clearly, right?
Yeah.
A quick one from you, Mayuk, if you have anything to add here.
Nothing new to add. I think Pranay and Amit both have spoken about the challenges. I think, if I just summarize in 4-5 points, first is ability of HR to create a business plan. And to showcase to the top management that this is why we need HR platform is the starting point. And often we fail miserably in that. And that's why the organization support in terms of providing you with the structure, providing with budgets, because it is not only doing it, it also in terms of sustaining it. So continuous commitment from the organization. And that is where the major role of the CHRO or the leader who is doing this, this is one of the key deliverables which this need to create that organizational commitment. And once you've created that, the next piece is owning up the change management. Right. And you cannot depend on IT to lead that for you. It has to be HR who leads it. IT is a support. I mean, that mindset has to, the change management mindset needs to come. And third piece is, once you have done that, the changing of competencies, even HR, the entire HR folks which we have, changing their mindset into moving towards technology. Once you change HR mindset, then the top management and then the larger organization to sort of lead that adoption and adaptability, as Amit was talking about. That is a constant strive which HR department needs to undertake to make this a success. So these are the major key points I think we should, as HR folks, focus on if you want to make a success out of this.
I completely agree. I completely agree to you. Getting the approvals or convincing the top management and getting the budgets is one major constraint. While people talk, it is not easy to actually get the approvals from the management as well. And then change management again is an important tool. From coming on the security part of it, because the moment we talk about platforms, and you specifically mentioned, Mayuk, there are a lot of platforms that have come in which needs to be integrated with one another, right? We talked to the Amit, if you can tell me from a security or from a cyber threat perspective, because you come in from an industry where, which is highly transactional and money moving continuously onto the platform. How do you look at the risks and the way to mitigate those risks?
Again, because of, high degree of usage of tech and adoption that has happened also, the threats have increased. And you're quite right in saying that we are living in a world where, we are as good as the last user of the system, right? Yeah. So, out of X number of employees that we have, it just takes one employee to go and click a link to one of the suspicious emails, and like you've had it, right? So you kind of go. So how do you really protect that part of it? We are also kind of need to deal with GDPR compliance and a lot of other things that have come into the picture. The regulators have become quite stringent around, you should have a very well-defined information security policy. Your HR tech systems need to follow some of those guidelines. I think one of the I kind of divide this into three parts. So obviously you need to create and build the right kind of information security policies, procedures, around each of the systems and platforms that you have created, around the processes. There should be well-defined BCP that should be in place. If this goes wrong, what happens, right? So you should have alternate sites in place. Once that structure and everything is in place, and you have the right set of people also who are there who will manage it on a day-to-day basis, I think the most critical part is how do you really get them to be more informed about it? How do you really communicate this piece? Because that's something which is very important. So how do you run your training solutions to tell people, why it is important to look at? How do you identify suspicious email? What do you need to do, and how do you need to manage your laptops and mobile phones, and what you shouldn't do? And this should be very simple. It shouldn't become complex, right? You need to find out ways and means in which you will be able to demonstrate people that this is something which is very, very critical for them, right? So today, if there is a virus attack or something happens, actually there's a big amount of data. Right. So
sorry about it.
So that's something which really works. Now, then you move into a situation where you are actually looking at saying that, do you have enough mechanisms to actually punish errant behavior which is not right and up to the mark, right? And I think organizations don't need to take it very lightly. And I think that is one of the very important, because you need to set an example, because this creates a lot of disturbance within the organization, right?
Right.
So from an HR point of view, this is always a fact that there is somebody who gave access of a laptop. Simple example, you gave access of a laptop to someone else, right? To use it, use for some reason. Now you need to have strong policies in place. So and it should be also very easily communicated, quickly communicated, and clearly communicated to everybody. So those behaviors, policies need to be defined. and there has to be an action that needs to be published out there saying that this is an action that we've taken. So there is a deterrent behavior that also happens, right? So my sense is if we do these 2 or 3 things, build and have the right InfoSec processes, you need to have training, InfoSec modules, a lot of communication happening on a daily basis. And then you also, kind of build strong HR policies to kind of take action in case there are deviations. I think that's something which is quite important to protect in an environment where we are continuously going to increase HR tech solutions.
Perfect. Thanks. And a quick one from you, Pranay, from your industry perspective, the risks and the mitigating measures to look at the overcome the risks. Pranay?
Sorry.
Pranay, you're not.
Yeah. Sorry. So from the risk and information security point of view, I think Amit has covered this pretty well. I mean, he comes from a business where these things are taken much more seriously than anywhere else, right?
Right.
So, and I think I totally agree. I mean, I was having a conversation with one of the prospective partners, and this is about some 8 to 12 months back. And I asked them on the GDPR thing, saying, where do you stand? And I wanted them to put that stuff into the contract part. And said, no, India is still to pass a law. There's no such law and it is not required and all. And I was like, why don't you be forthcoming and say that, okay, we'll start complying. You know what the measures are. You know what the requirements are going to be. Now, what is there to be scared about, right? I mean, India does not have a law, but it's a good practice to have European countries, Western countries all do that, right? They already follow that. And people were reluctant to do that, right? I said, I give them another option. I told them, okay, let us put this into the contract, right? And whenever that law passes, then you'll execute this. So let us put that, let us reword this and put this into the contract at least. They were hesitant in doing that also. Now, I'm not a very technical guy, so I do not know whether it is a cost thing or a lot of investment is required or whatever it is, but I know for sure that it's a good practice to have, right? It gives additional degree of security. A lot of all of my employees work for different clients, right? People like Amazon, Cards, which is Walmart now of the world, right? They have their own security requirements. They want my employees to follow certain security requirements, right? Now, I cannot go and say no to them. So anybody or any system that I built in essentially has to comply to all those requirements and, essentially will have to follow those stringent security guidelines. And I think one valid point that Amit raised was on the consequence management, that in case somebody does not follow a given security protocol or a set of policies or SOPs, how leniently or how strongly do we take this up, right? And this is a space where, we should, there should be no leniency at least, and this is what I believe. And people and such instances should come up as examples, saying that, okay, if I let somebody else access my laptop, if my organization has an InfoSec policy in place, or if I'm a 27K1 certified, if my laptop is being accessed or if my ID is being accessed by somebody, both of them stand to get fired. Nothing short of that. Trust me, you do this to 5 people, the 6th person will never come up in your life, right? But for some reason or the other, the business is the first one to push back on these kind of things. Arey, matlab laptop hi to share kiya, kind of, let him go, he's a good performer, there's some urgency. Dude, yes, why not? There's always some urgency, right? But then, right, so that it's also about the approach, the mindset. So how strong your policies are, totally agree with Amit on that, and how strong is the consequence management on that. These 2 things are fixed, I think we are sorted.
Perfect. I think thanks. And we have a few questions, and we're running against the time. So we have few questions from the audience, and I'll pass it to Sunilji, and to take the further questions from here.
Thanks, Ranu. I think we had thanks, Ranu, and thanks, Amit, Pranay, and Mayuk. In fact, we had got a very good insight, and it had been a deep conversation which we have got today opportunity to understand from you from various industries, and we feel really very much privileged. We have some questions. I think we'll start with the first question. Mayuk sir, with you. The question is addressed to you from Ashish. There could be limited data in HR domain, other than recruitment, payroll, etc., from an predictive analytics perspective. So hence, which area as per you are the focus area for analytics angle?
See, I mean, I mean, legacy data is is a backbone on which any predictive analytics will run. So it doesn't matter if you do not have, you can even if you have a limited set of data, build your first analytics model based on that, and you keep on refining it, because every month you are going to collect data and you are going to keep on refining that data. At least if you have 2 years of data, that's good enough place to start off with that. But yes, the most easiest areas to start off with is recruitment, attrition. These are two major areas which we can definitely start off with. Productivity, you can do good predictive analytics provided you have the business data as well. So you cannot do a predictive analytics on productivity if you do not have the business data coming in. And hence it is important that organizations have a concept called a data lake, where all sorts of data comes in and you can pick up the data from there. Because if it is only as HR, if you are trying to run a standalone predictive analytics on productivity, you will have a lot of issues in collecting the data on a month-to-month basis, and you'll spend more time in collecting the data rather than running the model. So these are the areas, and payroll is, of course, I mean, those are you can run predictive analytics easily on payroll, because payroll is a data which is definitely all of us get paid, so that data is there. So. But then that data is not a very useful data in terms of decision making. It has limited reach out in terms of decision making. But the other areas, you can definitely make a lot of difference if you have good predictive analytics model running.
I think very well put through, Mayuk. What you mentioned from an iteration data, which many companies overlook that, because I think that is a data basis which company can take a decision on what kind of new recruitment and new replacement one has to do, or new improvement one has to do. So that's something one area, something in an area which people can look at from an analytics perspective.
This is from very personal that. The first two analytics model that we prepared is that on recruitment is first of trying to predict who are the guys who you want to recruit, and if you recruit that guy, will he be productive for you, and if you recruit that guy, will he stick on with you?
True.
So retention and attrition, those are the two phases of the same coin. So those are questions which, these are business statements actually.
Exactly.
Because everything costs money. Right, and so if you define your business statement correctly, then your predictive model will be that much more useful.
True. Thanks, Mayuk. I see Pranay would like to speak something more. I think Delhivery would have a lot of analytics data to speak about this. Yeah, Pranay, go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you, Sunil. First thing here on this question, I disagree that there's limited data. The data is humongous.
Okay.
I mean, if the data is limited, which means you're not capturing it sufficiently, right? So employee demographic data is more than, I mean, so for example, if Amit is in the mutual fund domain, or if I'm in the logistics domain, the business data actually will be limited in terms of the number of customers, the NAVs, or whatever the other metrics are. You'll find some 20 different demographics there. When it comes to people demographics, that space is unlimited, right? I mean, and what we have started doing, and we have been doing it for a couple of years, and that's what we are executing now. Instead of attrition data, my attrition for my payroll staff, I'm not talking about the contractual staff, but attrition for my payroll staff is about 1.3% a month, right? Which is not a number that one should worry about generally. We still look at that only to figure out which are the people who are leaving still, or are we losing, or is there any bad attrition in that 1.3% also. That is one. But what we are doing slightly differently is we are looking more at the retention data. So people who have been top performers, people who have been consistent top performers and spent a considerable amount of time, what do their demographics say? What kind of backgrounds do they come from? Whether they were engineers, if they're engineers, they are mechanicals, what kind of colleges they came from, what is the age group, whether they are the first child, second child, small town or metro, all that demographic that we capture. And because what we believe is that, these are the people who are making the organization successful. These are the people who are taking the organization forward, right? And hence makes absolute sense to recruit more of this kind, right? If you analyze, and again, I totally agree that, I speak this with a caveat that this is not 100% accurate or 100% correct, but it's a very safe degree of accuracy, right? If you look at the current people who you think are making your organization successful, then you should hire more of those people, right? And hence, when you make your recruitment decisions, see out of, it's like that Kundali match thing before you marry two people, right? So see, मेरा successful employee का कुंडली में ये 36 गुण है, ये 36 में से कौन से गुण कैंडिडेट में मिलते हैं, right? और जितने ज्यादा गुण मिले, better are your chances of recruiting more people who will take the organization even further. So that's the only thing that I wanted to add.
No, it's definitely it is very important to get the right talent to run the company. Okay, and right talent is basis the past data and basis the new person or the new data which comes in through. Okay, I have next question from Madhur. Okay, which is also very similar to which is also towards analytics. With rapid evolution of AI and analytics in HR field, what major drawbacks do you foresee, or what are the challenges do you foresee? Pranay, would you like to take, because you have a lot of chunk of we'll start with you first, and we go to Amit. Yeah, go ahead. Pranay.
I'm audible, right?
Yes, no.
All right, cool. Okay, so I don't think there are any major drawbacks. I mean, data, what we need to understand here is that tech and data are only means to the end. They're not the end, right? The biggest drawback would be when you take the tech and data to be the end of the solution. It's not. It's only a means to the end. The decision making has to be with people like you, me, or anybody else on this call, or people in the organization. Don't rely on data or the machine to take decisions on your behalf, because end of the day, that's an algorithm in whatever shape or form, right? So keep the decision making to yourself. Whatever picture the data gives, keep the analysis, the final analysis part with yourself. The moment you see that, okay, the wage example that I gave initially when during the introduction part, if you are overshooting your budget by 2 crores and you get a really good candidate who will add another 50 lakhs to it, what do? The machine will tell you not to hire because you are already exceeding your budget, right? But then there are people at the leadership level who will say, okay, let us go ahead, take this call, invest in this person, because the machine will not tell you that the 50 lakh cost will come only for 2 months because you are already sitting in January, right? The full year's cost will be in the next year, next financial year. And even if the full cost is coming in the current month, you may still want to invest in the person because the machine does not know the person. The machine only knows the number. So don't let the machine take decisions on your behalf. Let the machine only facilitate those decisions, but keep the decision making to yourself. I think the moment you stop differentiating and the moment you start considering data and tech to be the end, that is where it actually ends. They are only a means to the end, not the end by themselves.
True. So I think the decision making has to be with the management team, and the machine and the data has to be a facilitator and the supportive. Very well put through, Pranay. Amit, you would like to put some light on this? In terms
agree with Pranay. I think,
yeah, sure.
Yeah. See, I'll just kind of remembered a simple experience that I had some time back, and it's quite a while back, 7-8 years back, and we were actually testing out an MI system which can predict which is the best fit for the role, right? System which can you create a cloud, X number of words, and you put out it reads an AI is very interesting thing 10 years back, right? Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, now it's okay. There was some issue in between. Yeah. Maybe you want to put off your video.
Looking at AI recruitment. Yeah, 1 minute. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's better.
It's okay. Yeah. So I was talking about a AI system, recruitment system, where you get a lot of CVs and then you put this AI system. So it predicts which are the 10 best CVs, again, 100 or 1,000 CVs that have actually come in, right? Matching the JD. Now, I had a very interesting experience. So what you do is 10 years back, it was very interesting to look at that system and then say, oh, technology has evolved significantly. Now, one of the things that actually happened at that point in time, I say, let me run my normal recruitment cycle. So what you do is you post a job, you get CVs, you select the CVs, you run plain simple, right? And then you come back into an AI system and run the same process again. Now you validate, right? So do you find a different person getting selected than the top 10 that, let's say, an AI system would have predicted, right? So why I brought this experience into this discussion was to say that it cannot, AI and MI can help you build that, but I think there is a lot more validation needed into it to really come and say that, okay, yes, this really works for us. And a lot of organizations will face different experiences while implementing it because the variability changes, environment changes, the people who are using it changes. You work in different industries. So it's not a one solution that fits in for everyone. So my take on this is that, yes, it's here to stay. It will continue to find its influence in all aspects of HR, just to help making decision easier. But I think we need to do proper validation. We also need to find ways and means in which you will also be able to not lose hope of the fact that, humans can make a lot of good decisions. So, which is where I agree completely with Pranay, saying that, okay, that ultimately needs to rest with us. So collect a lot of data, bring that all of thing in place, but then at the end of the day, the decision should be ours, or it needs to be a validated decision that everything is working fine.
Okay. Thanks, Amit. I have next question coming from Narendra. What kind of tech solutions are you using in recruitment domain? You mentioned about ML solution. Okay, so is there anything specific or from a technology perspective, which is an upcoming thing in a recruitment domain? Would you like to highlight, Mayuk, on that?
There are many actually. There are many actually in the recruitment domain, and one has to see, just because the technology is there, it is not necessarily everybody has to adopt those technologies. It's basically every organization needs to do the evaluation as to does it serve its purpose. That's why we said that defining the business statement, the problem statement is very important. There are multifarious tools, right from assessment tools to, like, say, AI, which states which sort of candidates you need to choose, and it goes and crawls into various websites and chooses candidates for you, to facial recognitions, facial analytics, and etc. while doing interviews. So there are multifarious handwriting analytics, etc. There are multifarious recruitment tools that one uses. But as I said, that every organization needs to understand where in the life cycle of the technology maturity it is in, what sort of difficulty it is facing, and then adopt tools accordingly. Because just because it's a fad, you adopt tool, it will not run for you. Neither will the adoption be good, nor will you get the benefit out of the money that one is spending.
True. Just to add on this, Mayuk, okay, from my experience, I think the voice recognition software is something which is very important, because with multiple rounds of interviews happening over virtual environment today, it is important to know it's the same person who is talking. Okay, it's not there's something not fake which is happening. Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe voice recognition software may help us in this. Pranay, would you like to throw some light on this? Because you mentioned that what you are looking for is from making this 85 to 98% accuracy in terms of getting the software to help and the talk and give the accuracy. So is that something that you are looking, and how ML can help in recruitment domain software?
So, see, I'll certainly not name any specific recruitment solution, and I think Mayuk very rightly put across the problem each one of us will be trying to solve for our organizations will be completely different, right? The approach that a lot of available applications or platforms take is that they create a solution which more serves a SME, MSME kind of an organization, which is trying to streamline their processes, and it is in that phase of automation right now. But they pitch that solution to big business houses because that is where the big bucks would come from, right? I'm not going to pay 120, 150 rupees or 200 rupees per user per month kind of a fee to streamline my admin processes, right? At the same time, companies who need to streamline the admin processes right now will also not pay that kind of a money, right? So that is where the conflict kind of starts within organizations. And I don't think I'll add much to this because Mayuk has already, and he's hit the hammer on the nail. Look at the problem that you are trying to solve. There's X application available in the market which may suit your needs. It might be the best of those applications in that space, but it may not satisfy my needs, right? My needs are more predictive in nature. Yours are more administrative in nature. There's no one tool which will solve both. And we have deliberated on that over the last hour or so, right? So look at what you are trying to solve for your organization. Whatever you find suitable, go ahead and take it. Only if you have a business case for it. Don't just run the route because everybody else is automating, and hence there's no peer pressure. There's no need to have a peer pressure here. Just because everybody is automating, I also need to automate, right? Maybe you are a 50 people organization. What do you want to automate? If I am a 50 people organization, I will never automate anything. Trust me, I'll never automate anything. But if I am a 5,000 people organization with those 5,000 people based out of some 300 cities, I mean, if I don't automate, I'll not be able to run that system. And these are two completely different problems, right? So look at the problem that you're trying to solve and then decide on what tool. As I also said, these are only enablers. These are not your end solutions. These are enablers. You are looking for an enabler now.
Sure. Thanks, Pranay. Next question is from Rohit Bor. He is referring to the data lake concept, which was explained a little while ago. Are you guys actually using data lakes? And if yes, how are you managing integrations from so many different transactional systems? I believe there are enough of technologies available in terms of AI available, enterprise application integrations available to integrate the different transaction systems and making it into the data lakes concept per se. Yeah, unless you want to throw any light on this, anyone of you, I'm keeping this question open. Yeah, Mayur.
Yeah, so data lake, yes, we are using data lake, and we are building a data lake. We've already sort of launched it. This is basically different transaction systems. We have built a middleware. We have built a middleware where different transaction systems come in. The middleware converts the data and throws it out into the data lake, which again, from the data lake, again, the analytics engines start picking up through API calls and things like that. So that is how basically in terms of architecture, that is how the data lake is configured.
Sure. I move to the next question, which we have got it from YouTube live stream. Okay, one viewer has put this question to Pranay. What are the parameters that you see in the successful employee matching, Kundli matching while recruiting? Okay.
So, I mean, let me clarify, there's no literal Kundli that we make, right? So the concept and from where it started for us is that, we were having a general chit chat with the founding group and a couple of other senior leaders. It was a very informal kind of a setup. And we're again thinking about sort of the succession of the organization and the leadership voids which exist currently and all of that. This started about 3.5 years back. And the obvious question which came up was, and we were discussing a couple of candidates that all of us had interviewed, sort of a debrief on those senior candidates. And then we said, okay, I mean, and obviously people had divergent views. There's somebody that the CEO liked, I did not like, somebody that I liked, somebody else did not like, those kind of things. And they happen. Our first reaction was, okay, I mean, how do I come to that decision of which one to hire and which one not to hire? Because there are divergent views, obviously, right? So there has to be something which has to unify those views and come to a conclusion. End of the day, on any candidate, you have to take a call, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, but a call has to be taken. You cannot lose time in taking decisions, right? And the obvious question which came to mind was that, okay, who are the people who have brought this organization so far? I mean, founding group is separate. They have a different thought process. Founding group -1 is also okay. I mean, you can leave those people out. And then we started calling out people that we remembered. So in a 10,000 people organization or 8,000 people organization, if at a leadership level, some 7-8 of us were sitting, and if we could take out all the founding group plus and the -1s, founding group and the one drops, basically take them out. And then you start recollecting employees who have contributed significantly to the organization. Now the names which come up then are the ones that you would have seen, heard, remembered, right? Which means they have done something significant. Otherwise, you generally won't remember them. I mean, that's a 40,000 people organization. Who remembers 40,000 names? Nobody. Right? Honestly, I won't even know today what is the exact count, whether it is 40,200 or 40,000 whatever 100. Right? But if there are certain names that come to your mind, right? Which means if I have a set of some 15 names, right? I know that, okay, these 15 people have contributed. And then suddenly everybody started telling stories about some of those people. So I said, okay, I think Sunil Kabra is a great contributor to this organization. I think I remember these couple of instances. Then somebody from the leadership group came and he said, okay, he had two more stories to share about Sunil, right? That's how the conversation built up, right? And then we came to the point that, okay, we are talking about these 10, 15 people. What do these people have in common? And then that is when we realized that we did not ever gather enough data on them, right? And then we started that exercise. And people said, "Oh, I've been around for 4 years. You are asking for all this data now." I'm like, "ठीक है यार, मतलब data ही तो पूछ रहे हैं, मतलब there's nothing confidential, right? I mean, ठीक है, बता दो." And it took us time, right? But one thing that we fixed was that every new joiner who comes in, I do not know whether he or she is going to be a good performer, star performer, bad performer in future, but at least capture all that data, right? So we split that into two parts. One, we started capturing the entire data for all the existing employees. And it took us time, it took us a lot of effort, but we saw merit in that. And for every current employee or every prospective candidate, we started capturing equal amount of data, right? And then we said, what are the common demographics which really matter, right? I'm not saying people who come from small town, all of them are very brilliant. At the same time, people coming from metros are also idiots, right? So, I mean, you'll have to do a check and balance kind of a thing there in terms of what are those parameters which are important. For me, we do not put a lot of stress on education, right? I mean, look at all the new startups, IIT, IIM, alumnus, consulting background. These are the three very standard features that you'll find in them, right? But surprisingly for our organization, beyond the founders, we have never looked at what college an employee comes from, right? I mean, ठीक है, founders started the organization, they are IIM graduates, you cannot undo that, right? But education is no guarantee of, it can help you segregate talent, right? And can shorten your recruitment process, that from a pool of 10,000 people, you only get to interview some 50 people. That part of the problem it will solve. But whether those 50 will be superly productive and contributing to the organization, you cannot really tell, right? Unless it happens. So you have to identify those parameters. People say, okay, I need a senior manager and it should have a 6 year, and he should have a 6 years of experience, right? My other business leader says, नहीं 8 साल का experience होना चाहिए. अरे, how did that number come? मतलब कहाँ से लाए तुम वो number? कि 6 साल और 8 साल में क्या अंतर होता है? Right. So we have deliberated a lot on each of these smaller demographics also. Right. Right now I have people in my system who are engineering graduates from one of the NITs, and 5.5 years with the organization. First job ever. The guy is a director. If I go by the JD, a director should be like 12 years, 15 years kind of an experience. This guy will never make a director in my organization, because by that time he would have left and moved on in life. Somebody else will see the value in him, right? So a lot of these restrictive barriers is something that we have removed. I'm not saying they're not useful. Obviously they're useful, but for my organization at this stage, probably not. Maybe 10 years down the line with the same organization, I'll want to bring those barriers back. I'll want to make some of these criteria more stringent, but not now, right? So study the demographic, see what are the common traits which are coming up. You need not match, as I said, wo 36 ke 36 gun milna is not important, right? The more they match, the merrier it is.
Sure. Thanks, Pranay, for a very comprehensive answer. Moving on to the next, it's coming from Vinita. With work from home about to come to an end, do you think some of the platforms adopted in the lockdown may become redundant? That's the question. I think she's referring to some collaborative platforms which are available to bring kind of a virtual office on the space. So, are they going to come to an end? And so that's the first part of the question. Maybe Amit, you want to take that?
Yeah. So, my view is that, if there was a specific need which served the purpose when he adopted a tech platform, and if you think that the need has actually gone immediately, then it's a decision of the company to say that maybe we no longer need the HR tech platform or any system that you have adopted, right? That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is that, has that changed the way we look at work? Has that changed the way to redesign our policies and processes? I can just give a very simple example of saying that obviously all of us, we are doing it on Zoom and Microsoft Teams and a lot of other platforms are there. I'm giving example of 2 days back, we reached 5 lakh crore of AUM and we wanted to celebrate and all of that. And usually then what happens is corporate office comes together, 100 people. Obviously we didn't have that many people. So we had 10, 50 people. And one very interesting thing that happened, that we could have done that in a normal situation. We could have easily done that, in as a town hall where all 100 people coming in the corporate office come together, we cut a cake and all of that. But we are also spread in 300 other locations. So there was no possibility of kind of bringing everybody with sales organization. So here what we were able to instantly do, and in fact, it took me not more than half an hour or 45 minutes to do a live session of cake cutting, senior leadership being there, being transmitted across to 300 locations live where every employee joins. So, right. So do I want to let go of that going forward? Or do I want to adopt it and bring it more closer? So get people more closer, right? When they are far. 300 locations, we did an engagement session very recently, right? People were actually playing guitars sitting out of Kerala, right? In 32 years of the history of the company, that has never happened where we knew that we have a guitar player sitting out of Kerala, right? Or there's a photographer sitting out of Bhubaneswar. Now, because we did that, it happened. Yes, it would be quite nice to bring everybody together, be there at one place, organize it in a big resort and get everybody. But then it also gives you avenues to be able to get people connected, bring closer. So these are only a few aspects that I'm talking about. But I think it depends on the organization to look at its need and continue. I feel that you should find the best of what you have learned and experienced in the last 1 year and continue to build on it to create the right, HR processes and experiences across the organization. That's my take on this.
Thanks, Amit. We'll take just one last question, Mayuk. Maybe you can briefly you can cover that up because we are almost running out of the time. So, is cloud computing system going to streamline the recruitment process? That's the question. So, we'll just have a brief answer on this and we'll close. Sure.
I don't think cloud computing has to do anything with the recruitment process. You can run a physical recruitment process or you can run a virtual recruitment process. As long as your process per se is well defined, it is not going to affect the outcome. Yeah, cloud computing is going to perhaps help you in terms of what sort of cost that you spend, in terms of your data storage, in terms of availability of your server spaces and all those things. So cloud will help you. Moving to a cloud will help you. Also, in terms of, there's always a tussle between, whether to adopt a SaaS-based platform or an on-prem platform. So each has its own advantage and disadvantage. But obviously, a cloud-based platform, SaaS platform, has its long-term merits, which on-prem module doesn't have. Though it gives a much more better flexibility in terms of customization. But but I don't think cloud computing is going to streamline the recruitment. You can streamline the recruitment without any sort of computing, as long as you can define your process well.
Thanks, Mayuk. I think we are coming to an end to a Q&A session. Okay. And thanks, Mayuk, Amit, and Pranay for your insights and inputs on all the questions. Over to you, Ranu. Thanks.
Thanks, Sunilji. I think there were a lot of things that we discussed today in terms of understanding the kind of solutions that are available. We spoke about Netflix kind of platforms in the learning space. We spoke about empowering the HR function from the age of empowering the HR function to the user experience. In fact, the view was common from all the panelists that we move from user experience and develop the product backward. Pranay made very important point when he said, of all the solutions, do we actually are the developers or the companies which are developing solutions really identifying the problems and coming up with a solution? And a lot has been done by the technology today. And by the time we talk, there'll be so much more solutions that will keep coming up continuously and power the HR function in taking up decisions. Certain things that we spoke about, HR trying to throw predictive decision making, rather solutions which will help in taking up decisions over a period of time, are all the kind of solutions that we're talking about. We keep talking, and we will, I'm sure, keep updating our audience on the continuous basis on various innovations, new developments happening in the HR space. I would like to thank Amit, Mayuk, and Pranay specifically for providing their time for this session and to make it happen. It was quite interesting to understand the views from each of you guys from various aspects of your business, and we'll keep in touch and will request to have you sometimes again on the panel and share your views in the future. Thanks a lot to Sunil and Vicky as well, and my audience for listening to us and sharing your questions and understanding, and also being patient audience with us. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Anu and Vicky.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.